So we're ready to put some more states up from this trip. Our rule was that we wanted to spend 1 day and night there, and if we didn't do that, it didn't count. So we went to Pennsylvania, we went to Tennessee, but we didn't explore there. We just kind of went through. We didn't spend a whole day there. So we are not putting those up, but we will put them up soon as we get back there. So we are going to put up Ohio, West Virginia, North Carolina, and Kentucky this time. So Ohio and Kentucky are kind of stuck together here in our jigsaw puzzle. So put those both up at the same time. Next we've got West Virginia, which I think was probably both our favorite part of the trip.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Okay, Virginia. And our last state that we're putting up is the one that we actually spent the most amount of time in this trip, which was North Carolina.
Awesome.
It's pretty exciting to start to see some states going up on here.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Looking forward to filling in some more next month. I'm Alex.
I'm Kaylee.
And we are Pinter Whitnick.
We're musicians living and traveling full-time in our van.
Join us for van life adventures, music, and shenanigans on the road.
We're back in Michigan. Everything went pretty smoothly with the build and with the van.
All of our systems seemed to work pretty well. The power was great. We only had to plug in one time with the solar that we installed just before we left. We refilled our water tank one time. Everything stayed on the shelves pretty well. Mm-hmm. So we were just generally really happy with how everything was going. There's just a couple things when we got back that we wanted to do. First of all, we cleaned up the van because we'd spent a week and a half adventuring and tracking in mud.
When we got back to Michigan, there was an insane thunderstorm, and we noticed in the left corner of the van that there was a leak coming through. It just kind of went all over the floor, and we don't really want that to keep happening.
We also hooked up our solar in quite a hurry and didn't have everything that we needed. So when we were cable managing up there, we just sort of put some of that adhesive tape over everything to hold it down. And it wasn't the best look. So we're going to go ahead and take that off and try to do a little bit better management up there.
Another thing we noticed when we were camping somewhere and outside we had fairly good signal on our phones. The moment we stepped into the van and shut all of the doors, it was a struggle to maintain signal on our phones. So we decided to purchase a cell booster and to install that in the van, so that way hopefully we can be in the van with all of the doors shut and be able to operate our phones and use internet and all that good stuff.
So let's get to work. We've started to get to work in here, cleaning everything up after our trip. It's looking much nicer. We had such torrential rain when we got back to East Lansing a couple days ago that we actually had a leak coming in here, which is where I had ripped off those brackets on the inside. Before I got the van, a tree had hit here and dented the top. Since it's dented there, the water was able to flow in because it was raining so hard, flowed down here and into this area where the door closes. And then there was holes along here, and the water was able to drip down in there and went to the floor and actually spread back there some. There was so much rain that day. So we're drying everything out. Everything looks good. I've got this patched up with some lap sealant, and I think we'll be in good shape there. As a little insurance, we added some of that Eterna tape from the roof onto these holes that we seal with the lap sealant. Hopefully that'll make sure that we don't have any issues there again. We didn't have any leaking issues over here, but we decided to put some tape on this side too, just in case. The solar panels did exceptionally well on our trip. I couldn't believe how well they did. But one thing that for sure we wanted to fix was this cable management here that we did with the tools we had with us in a hurry because we were leaving so soon. But out of all of it, it looks like the sloppiest part. So what I'm gonna do is take all of this tape off that we put up here and do a little better job cable managing so it's a little sleeker. Well, it was very difficult and took some elbow grease to get the tape and all of that adhesive off of this edge. The wires were especially hard to clean, so I decided just to wrap them with some electrical tape. It also gives a little more protection to these connections here. We've got all these cables tied down here, and some of them run through this channel just to hide a little bit. These tie downs are awesome. I wish that we could go back on the inside and rerun some of the cables using those, because those are great. We'll see how well they hold up in the weather, but they're supposed to be pretty good. It looks so much more low profile than it used to, with all of the wad of that tape. From the top it looks great. From the side it looks just like there's less going on there. It's less noticeable. It helps us blend in a little more, I think, than it did before, because from most angles the solar stays really low to the roof and it's hard to notice. And I think that this looks better and blends in more than it did before. So really excited that we decided to do this. Worth it. We've had to make a minor change here. We had this pump and it was working really well, but the spout here is just a little too fragile for us. And as we were moving in music gear and whatnot, we broke it off time after time, and we glued it, and eventually it just wouldn't pump out water without leaking. So we decided to get something that we think is going to be a little better for our purposes, and that's basically the same pump but with a better spout. So this one is like all built in. It's not going to break off very easily. It's actually a little sleeker, which is nice. So we're pretty excited. We'll see how it looks. Hey, it's a minor difference, but it is way sleeker. I mean, it's probably half as, maybe 2/3 as thick. It's a little taller, so it's a little bit taller on there. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So the cell booster is usually used just to increase the signal in a place where there isn't a lot of signal. But pretty much everywhere we went, we found that we had decent signal. We're just hoping that by having an antenna that brings it inside the van, we're gonna be able to have better service actually in the van. So the first thing that we have to do is put this external antenna on the roof, and it's just magnetic. So you should just be able to put it down. It's supposed to be 12 inches at least away from any windows and sort of centralized in the vehicle. So we're thinking we're gonna set it here in the middle and run the cable over here into this channel, and then run that cable through here, under the weather stripping, and inside through here. But before we do any more installation, we want to plug it all in and test it out. We have here the cable from the external antenna, which will plug into this big booster thing. Here's the internal antenna, which will actually be connecting to our devices. And then we have the power cable. So we're gonna hook all this up. So currently we have one bar and it's turned off. So now we're gonna switch it on and see if anything changes. We're now connected. We have two bars. We have the doors closed here, and we have the booster turned off, and we're gonna test what we would be getting here. This is outside my grandpa's house. We get very poor signal here. 102 millisecond ping, and still waiting for it to start. There it goes. We're getting about 1 megabit per second internet speed, which is pretty awful. So now we're going to turn it on and see if that helps. Okay, we have a green light on here. Okay, now it's connected, solid green, and we'll run the same test again. So our ping is about half of what it was. In this case, you're getting about 8 times the speed, maybe 7 times the speed. We've seen it go all the way up to as high as almost 50. But we're definitely at a point where when we had the doors closed before, we couldn't get any signal. We couldn't bring up any web page. And now things are connecting much better. So we think it's a winner. Found a great spot to put the booster, which is a spot right above the wheel well behind the refrigerator. We got it plugged in there. We just got to plug in the other 2 cables and run those over. Okay, we have our cables run here from the Goal Zero. We got this nice little power switch. It does draw a bit of power, so it's nice to be able to turn this off when we don't want to use it. And you can see that our watts go down quite significantly almost doubles our watt usage here. So we'll be able to turn that on and off as needed. Runs back behind there and behind all of our behind our water tank here, and then hooks up to the booster right there. Okay, and we've secured this cable down to the roof, and it's running through here. Management of this cable, it turned out okay. Really difficult to tell that it's even running down there. We had some issues with our carbon monoxide and natural gas detector. I'm not sure what caused it, if it was maybe too much dust or sawdust when we were working. But as soon as you plugged the battery in, it would start beeping like it was detecting carbon monoxide, regardless of whether it was inside or in the van, doors open, doors closed. So I think we either have a defective unit here or we did something to mess it up. So we went ahead and got a new one that's a little better. This one is specifically meant for RVs, and it still detects carbon monoxide and LP gas, so that's good. The other good thing about it is it's hardwired in, so we never have to worry about batteries or anything. As long as we have our 12-volt power going, which we always do because the fridge takes that, we'll be good. So I'm gonna look for a space to install this and then figure out how we want to plug it in. So according to instructions, it has to be 4 inches off the floor at least, but no more than 20 inches off the floor. It's supposed to be no more than 12 inches from any door or window. And we're kind of ruling out every place in the van, either here, which is more than 20 inches above the floor but has a nice clear path to airway, although it's close to the door. The other candidate would be here, which is behind where the water tank is, but since the neck of the water tank leaves some clearance around it, we think it will be able to get enough airflow in here to be able to sense if there were propane. Plus, you can see these wires coming out the back. It'll be easy to wire that in down to the battery since we're so close to it. So I think that's gonna be the winner. If you have seen any number of our vlogs before, you know that hooking up anything means making an extension on this wire so that we can go from this end to plug into our little power strip hub thing, which hooks into the 12-volt power. So that's what I'm going to do right now. We have the power pole adapter put on to the carbon monoxide detector, and then we've made a separate cable here, extension, power pole on both sides to be able to plug into this end and then into our hub back in here. So now it's time to drill a hole in one of these panels to run the cable back down through that hole into our hub. All right, we've got the hole drilled. The cable has been run through the hole there and is now coming out right there. Now it's time to hook it up and make sure everything works. Okay, we have the green light on here, and if I push this, it's gonna make a loud beep, and it seems to be working pretty great. So we're gonna install this now, and then get everything put back together. There it is, all installed. While I was back here working on the carbon monoxide detector, I decided to go ahead and screw this surge protector into this little panel here, just to keep it up in the air, keep some cable management happening here, so then we have the adapter for shore power to plug Vehicle Zero in. So it's all looking okay back there, nice and tight up in there. And you can see here, as we initially thought, there is a nice gap here around the water tank. So you can see the light from the carbon monoxide detector. And so hopefully this is enough of an air gap to make that sensor go off if anything should happen. But at the very least, we can see the light and make sure it's on, make sure nothing's wrong with it. And then all of the minor cable management that I just did is nice because it sits between the wheel well and there and behind the water tank. One of the best parts about working on any little project in the van is when we get it all put back together. It just feels so satisfying. When we have our carbon monoxide detector plugged in, about how much more power are we drawing. On average, we're drawing about 1 watt when the fridge is idling, which I'm assuming it's doing now. So maybe we're drawing 2 more watts having that plugged in, which is awesome. I mean, it's using next to nothing. And then when the fridge idles up to cool down some more, it'll use about 40, 50, 60, and then it'll go right back to using 1 watt. So looks like we'll be increasing our power just a touch, but it's all in the name of safety, and that's a good thing. So happy to have that installed. One more project done. I bought our Ram ProMaster City in 2017, drove down to Indianapolis to pick it up, and on the way back got a chip in the windshield. So this is now 4 years ago. That chip turned into a small crack, and then the first time I went on tour and drove out in the winter, the windshield was freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, and the crack spread. And after all this time, I still had the same windshield with the same crack. It's not super noticeable from the outside, but I'll show you from the inside. The crack started down there and spread up the side all the way to the top, and did the exact same thing all the way on the other side up to the top. There's a new crack that started up there, and just all kinds of chips throughout the years that have developed on here. It is just so annoying and gets in the way of filming a lot. Needless to say, it's time for a new windshield. But before we go and put a new windshield on and more cracks happen, we got a little stone bug deflector thing, which will hopefully work better because it seems like this van is a magnet for rocks and bugs. And hopefully this deflector will make it so that the new windshield will last much longer than the old one did. So here we have the deflector. And it's just plastic, fairly lightweight. Comes with these little connectors here, and it will sit right where the hood opens here. It'd be like giving Clever Girl some eyebrows. So it looks to be as easy as feeding these screws through the holes and then attaching those to the clips on the inside, and then putting these little plastic caps over top of the screws after you're done. These clips that I just put on will just slide right over the edge of the hood here. I think the instructions might have told me to do this backwards. They're not very complex instructions, but they're not very detailed either. So I put the clips on first, and we'll see if it fits a little better now. This seemed to work much better. Here are these little plastic pieces that will have double-sided tape on the back side, and then we'll sit against the hood on the other side so that it keeps the deflector a little angled up. So those just fit under there, right there. Now the last thing that has to be done are these little caps that go over the screws.
Maybe. Ah!
Now we're ready for the new windshield. I'm sorry. It's done. So much better.
It looks so great.
Now you don't even have to avoid like all the cracks and chips in there.
I know. I'll be able to record freely around that area and this area because there was always...
Was just noticing that everything looks like super HD now, which is stupid, but like it's so clear looking out. And also the old windshield for some reason had a very green blue tint to it, so when we are producing the video, like there has to be a lot of like color grading done to make all the colors of whatever we're driving towards look normal, and this looks pretty neutral, so I think that'll take out some work that we have to do normally.
It looks awesome. I can't get over it. It feels like we're driving in a different vehicle.